So, when did counseling stop being about problem solving? Well, not anymore. Introducing solution-focused counseling with the unlicensed counselor. And now, here's your host, Steve Moak.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of The Unlicensed Counselor. My name is Steve Moak. I am the Unlicensed Counselor, and as always, so grateful, especially grateful to be here on a nice, steamy Scottsdale, Arizona day. I have got a special guest in studio that I'm going to introduce here momentarily. Have a new kind of format for the show. I'm going to start bringing in some more guests and really kind of talking about some of the mental health, behavioral health topics, but as they pertain to kind of folks' stories, right? I want to hear about people's backgrounds, some things that they've learned, and hear a little bit about their journey. And there's some really interesting and unique stories that are out there in the world, and my guest in studio today is certainly no stranger to that. But before we jump into that, I want to say a quick thank you to our continued sponsors that are out there. First, our friends at ShareTech. Go to betterdrugtest.com. Look, if you're in the market for an at-home drug or alcohol test, the ShareTech at-home test is the only one to be picking up. Go to betterdrugtest.com. Again, I'm working on a promo code to pass that along to our customers as well, too. Next up, I always like to talk about the youth drug prevention work that I do here on the show. Go to thestopstartshere.org. Again, this is youth drug abuse prevention stuff that I'm super passionate about. This is a nonprofit that I co-founded with a group of individuals. Give us a follow at Hard Stop Official. We are releasing a ton of new content. But again, parents, school is starting. We have a whole handbook. It's called the Parents Prevention Playbook that really gives you tips and strategies on youth drug abuse prevention. Pick that up. You'll be glad that you did it as we start this school year. Last shameless plug for myself. Give me a follow on YouTube, Instagram, all the usual places you do it. Just find the Unlicensed Counselor, and you're going to see all the clips from the show in case you don't have the time to do it. But this brings me to an interview that I've been looking forward to having for quite some time here. So in studio, we have here a friend of mine named George Castro. I met George at a boxing studio probably 5 or 6 years or ago. And we became fast friends, I will say. And it's been on my mind to have George in studio. George, so glad to have you in studio. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day.
I appreciate the invite, man. It's going to be a good time. So I've been listening to a couple of your episodes, and I'll give you an A+, man. You're doing all right, bro. Good stuff, bro. Good stuff.
Been called worse.
You have. I've called you worse.
Yes, you have. You know, and it's funny that you say that. One of my favorite things about the friendship that we have, in a world where I grew up, and probably you grew up too, in gyms and sports and athletics, we used to be able to bust each other's balls.
Yeah.
And at the boxing gym where you and I met each other, and you were a trainer, and we had a group of guys that were hanging out, kind of those types of friendships and bonds were formed, and it's through kind of giving each other a hard time. And honestly, in today's world, it seems like it's almost taboo or people don't do that. But I really do appreciate that we've always kind of given each other a hard time, and it's fun that way, right?
Yeah, it is fun. I mean, I used to look forward to those classes at night when you guys would come in and see, Phil coming in,
That's
you coming in. I forgot the other guy's name. But Chris. And, bro, we would just bust each other's chops like it was a barbershop. You know what I mean?
Really...
It made the night funner.
It really did make it more fun, and I always kind of wonder, like, where did that go? Or, like, how do people kind of do that? And I'm the same way. I really look forward to it. But before we get too far into the interview, if you want to give people an idea where they can find you, either on social or if they want to come train with you here in town. Yeah,
guys. So I'm on a self-made training facility here in Scottsdale. I'm the lead trainer down there, manager, whatever you want to call it. But we got a great facility down there. We got a group of great trainers you can hire from kettlebells to fighting, and it's a great environment. It's got good music. It's always clean, and I'm proud to say that I run that gym over there with the owners down there. So it's been a good time.
I follow your social. I mean, you do great social media work yourself, and I follow the self-made stuff and what they do there, and just the look of that gym is really cool. I go to I call it a foo-foo gym. I know you would probably call it that.
I would,
but it's in Scottsdale.
It gets the job done.
It's a little different, But the equipment that you guys have, it looks amazing. Like, I'm always wanted to get over there. And I know some of the other trainers there, but I just haven't made my way over. But it looks damn cool.
Yeah, it's got a good atmosphere, man. You got some graffiti on the wall. You got some good music, loud, It's full of people that are in shape and people getting in shape. So it's a good mix of crowd there. But, you got to come down and do some boxing classes.
All right. I mean, I don't know if you can handle these fists of fury, right?
Yeah. I don't know about all that, bro. We might want to stick to the mic.
Oh, that is too funny. Well, that's actually a good place to kind of start our conversation today. On the Unlicensed Counselor, I always talk about take-home value and kind of bite-sized pieces of information. I like to give people, when they listen to an episode, something that they can kind of put in place today. And I think that a lot of that can be done by learning about other people's journeys. Right. I know a little bit about your background because, again, we kind of bust each other's balls. But if you wouldn't mind maybe talking a little bit about where you grew up, I think it was in Tucson, yeah. and kind of how you started out, maybe how you got in this path. And I believe there was some I don't know if we want to call them detours along the way. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that if you're willing to share.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I'm from Tucson, Arizona. I was born in 1973, so I'll be 51 this coming year. And grew up, great family, mom and dad. Had a sister growing up. My brother came a little bit later. I'm 51, he's 33, so there's 34. There's a big gap there.
Gotcha.
So grew up in Tucson, on the south side of Tucson. Went to Drexel Elementary, Apollo Junior High. Went to Deja View High School. We're the 91 state champs in baseball.
I was going to say, do you play sports or anything while
I
you were
was
there?
Team captain of the baseball team my senior year.
Baseball. I would have guessed football just looking at it.
Yeah, they wanted me to play. I just didn't. I was so hooked on baseball, you know, and I just thought I was going to play professionally. Huh. And that's where kind of I'll get into that, where that detour happened.
Got it.
Kind of like most stories, you know, a guy comes playing good sports, missed the opportunity, and they go the wrong way. But I'm back on track, and, you know, I appreciate you letting me tell my story. Just because I think it does impact certain people that are going through situations like this. Like I told you off air, I talked to my old high school, and it was pretty cool how many kids wanted to learn a little bit more after the interview, after the whole seminar thing was done. You know?
I think that especially young kids, teenagers, and things like that, they can connect more with somebody who's been through it than somebody who's maybe just out there telling them they shouldn't do this. But you've been through it. And then what you learned and maybe what you could do differently along the way. So I'm super curious to hear about this.
So growing up in Tucson, all I did was play baseball. That was my whole life, from the morning till night, whether it was going to school and doing it or, you know, and playing street ball with my buddies, going to the ballpark. But that was basically my life, was growing up. My dad was a great mechanic. I didn't pick that up. I didn't care about anything else. And I still don't know anything about tools. So my dad will love that. But I just wanted to play pro baseball. That was the only thing I wanted to do. So all through, you know, I got cut in the junior high team, and I got crushed my 8th grade year, and I didn't make the team.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm like, holy cow, maybe this ain't for me. But I ended up, you know, making the freshman team at my high school, and then actually got called up my sophomore year to varsity because one of the guys got hurt. And my first high school game as a sophomore, I hit a home run against our rival school.
That's got to be a pretty
cool
that
was
memory.
that was my Al Bundy moment right there. You know what I mean?
So I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, bro, it was epic, man. I still think about that. It was just one of them feelings.
You keep the ball? You still have the ball somewhere?
My mom and dad probably
Your mom and dad have it? Okay.
My mom's got everything, man. So, but yeah, going back to my childhood, I had a great childhood. I had great parents. They gave us everything they could. Hardworking parents. They're still hardworking. They're retired now, but I think that's where I got my work ethic, man. I just see my parents grinding all the time, and I'm pretty sure I picked that up from them. You know?
So you're in high school. It sounds like a stud athlete. I mean, if you're playing varsity baseball and things like that, where did things maybe change along the way? You know, and I'll just say this before you even go.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction, right? So, you know, feel free to talk about it. I'm not saying that's a part of your story, but you can be as open as I'm coming up on 10 years sober.
Congrats.
Drugs and alcohol in high school. I was supposed to be, captain of the basketball team and captain of the track team, and I took a couple detours myself as well.
We've all done it, right? So, we've all done it, man.
You can be super open about whatever it was.
And, I after high school, I got a scholarship, a full ride to Arizona Western out in Yuma.
Oh, cool.
And I don't know. I still don't. Maybe I just bitched out. I don't know, man. But I went out there. I didn't perform like I should have, and I was the last guy to get cut. And I didn't have a backup plan. I really thought I was going to play for the Dodgers. I remember working my last job before I left for college. It was at this Western store selling Wranglers and crap like that. And I remember telling the employees, "All right, the suckers, this is my last job. You're going to see me on the diamond one day." And now they're probably like, "Yeah, whatever," But I really thought that was going to happen. So when I didn't make the team, I didn't have a backup plan.
Wow.
So I came back to Tucson. I remember working at a grocery store. I remember working like daily pay jobs. I just didn't know what to do. And I kind of fell into this kind of friendship with a few guys and ended up working at their gym and managing that. And I was kind of seeing like, yo, this is what they're doing doesn't match the income coming in.
Got it.
So. And I'm the one that asked. Nobody ever pushed me to do nothing. I don't blame nobody for nothing. Whatever happened to me in my life, I did it to myself.
Got it.
I had my parents telling me what happened. I had other friends telling me. I just didn't care. I didn't know what else I was going to do after not playing ball. I was kind of lost. And I just never thought I was going to be in that situation, you know. And ended up getting involved with these guys and doing some, you know, some illegal things, transporting some drugs, you know, across states. And I was 17, 18 years old, you know. Shit, I remember lying to my parents where I was. We didn't have caller IDs back then, so they didn't know where the hell I was, you know. And I even look back now at 18 and some of those things I did, but there's no way I would do that right now. It's just crazy to...
Isn't it crazy to think about some of the situations maybe we put ourselves in along the way, and it's like, how did I even get
crazy,
out
you know, and I'm going to be honest, man, a lot of my life there's been situations where I shouldn't be here, and whether it was God or whatever was going on, I know that I shouldn't say I should, but being alive at this age is a shocker for me. You know, I've always told my mom I wasn't going to live past 30. You know, and I always told her that, you know, and it's just crazy how I actually did pass away, but that's another story we'll put in a little bit. So, but after I got cut, I got kind of wound up with these guys. And again, good guys, man. You know, I met a lot of good guys when I was in prison. You know, I did 3 years in Florence prison, you know.
Well, maybe back up a little bit. How did that, you meet these guys, you end up transporting things. I mean, again, share what you're comfortable sharing with there, but I think it'd be interesting to know because you're doing good, you get cut, you're kind of a little bit lost, and I'm sure that's a pretty relatable position for a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of end up on this path? And obviously I'm curious how you ended up in prison, right?
It
was prison, not jail, right?
Yeah, I did 3 years, So ended up transporting some drugs. You know, as young, I was getting paid, you know, really good money for being 18 years old, and it was cash, obviously. So it just intrigued me more. Like, man, I can do this make this kind of money in a week or two. Like, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. I was kind of doing that little pity game where I didn't make what I wanted to do in baseball. So I'm like, well, maybe this is what I'm meant to do, you know?
Interesting.
Because there was a time where I'm like, I want to be this big drug dealer. Now I look back like, man, what the hell was I? You know, but that's just what I was doing then, so I didn't know any better.
And you probably who you were hanging around with
for sure.
too. And I've hung around plenty. I mean, I dealt drugs as well, maybe not necessarily to that level. I mean, you see the things that they have and the parties and girls and the strip club and all that kind of stuff. I mean, and especially a young guy, it's kind of appealing. You get a little status going and things like that too. So I get it.
You know, you start going into bars at 18, people know you. It's just
people know you.
It's a fake. It's kind of a fake love type deal, but you don't see that when you're in it. You feel just tough and cool, you know. But now that I look back, I'm like, man, there's not one of them people that gave two rats ass about me. You know what I mean? But and I found out later when things got rough, and I saw who was there and who wasn't there. But so I did a couple of runs, and I actually got caught doing my third run, I think it was, or something like that. I got caught in a small city in like Missouri somewhere, and I was just driving. I had pretty good amount of weed in the trunk, and I remember getting pulled over, and I'm like, man, this is real. You know, this is real. So the cop pulled me over. I mean, I was in a rental car, Mexican guy, young. It's just it is what it is. But so I ended up getting out of that one, man. It was crazy. So the cops pulled me over, and I'm gonna be honest, man. They took the car, they took the weed, they did everything. Like I didn't hear from them again. I don't know what the hell happened, what they did, but it was a crazy situation. I did go to jail that night, and I got out a few days later. But the people in the jail told me what lawyer to get and everything.
Really?
It was crazy, bro. Yeah,
it
was like their own little kind of
their
own in scheme thing they were doing there.
Interesting. So wait, you get off with this arrest, and then you go back.
I go back and start doing it again, bro.
Isn't it crazy how our mind works?
It's just
like
crazy, bro. Like
don't use this as the blessing that it is. It's like I gotta get another one.
Yeah,
right.
That's what I mean. So I came back and I took a little break, just because I was kind of rattled. I didn't know really what was going on, and I got off that case, man, with like a misdemeanor on it, and I said, wow, I didn't teach me a lesson. I just thought you thought you beat it.
You're you're that much better now.
I'm just better than them, you know what I mean? But, then I ended up doing it a little bit longer, still making some great money. And then I did one more big run, and I actually got caught here in Phoenix doing that one.
Jeez.
And this was pre 9/11. There was no check, so we were taking this stuff on the plane just like the movie.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
like
exactly, bro. Yeah, that's true life. You know what I mean? So, I mean, that's that type of movie there, man. It just brings back a lot of crazy memories, and I always tell buddies like, man, some of my stories sound so like fake. I hate telling them because they don't sound real. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
But they're real. I went through it, and it was it was some crazy shit. You know what I mean?
So you get pulled over. So you're now pulled over. You get arrested here in Phoenix, and now
that one's for real.
You're getting out of
Phoenix
this
ain't
one.
playing around. Yeah,
you're not
Phoenix
getting
ain't
out of
playing
this
around,
one.
so-
what's the whole process like? So you get pulled, you get thrown in jail, you go to
Yeah.
trial, and now you end up in prison. I mean, what is
Yeah.
that whole experience like? And I am curious on the prison front because that just
sure.
sounds super scary.
I remember it took me to is it the Horseshoe or so? I haven't been in jail since or arrested.
Good.
So yeah, so I
Congrats,
think
I guess.
I
I
appreciate
don't know
that,
what to
bro.
say to that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Like it's an accomplishment, right?
Right.
Yeah, so they took me down to the, they took me in, they questioned me. Obviously, they wanted me to rat. I said, man, I'm not doing that,
Yeah.
man. Like, I'd rather just do life. I'm not ratting on nobody. I gave my word as a man when this started, and I'd say I'm going to die with my word.
Yeah.
So I didn't rat. So obviously they wanted to stick it to me, and I'm getting a lawyer. I got a lawyer, and they were talking about giving me 15 years.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, holy cow, man.
Was it? Do you mind if I ask? Is it
Yeah.
weed? Is it coke
Weed.
at this
Yeah,
point? And
weed.
so 15, just because it's legal now. So
Yeah.
how crazy it is that you could have been facing 15 years.
Yeah.
For now, you can go to a dispensary around the corner.
Easy, right?
Isn't
It's
that trip?
crazy. It's crazy.
That doesn't seem right.
And
But
even when I
story
was
for
in
another
there-
time.
yeah,
But
another
wow,
time,
that's
but-
wild.
But even then, I was in there in the prison with guys that were doing less time for armed robberies. They were just really sticking it to guys getting in trouble with drugs, it's just crazy. I remember, like, you did an armed robbery with a gun, you're doing a year and a half. They wanted to give me, I got 3.5, so it's just, yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's backwards back then. I don't know how it is now, but I just hope I don't have to find out ever again.
Good,
I don't mess around, but
No.
yeah, I learned my lesson after that one, but yeah, I ended up signing a plea deal for 3.5 years. I actually left the state. I was going to be a fugitive. I left. No, I left.
Oh, you did
I
leave?
did leave, yeah. And I had everything set up. I was going to be a fugitive. I wasn't doing 15 years.
That was the plan. You
that
just
was- I'm
like,
just-
screw it. I'm going to take my
I'm
chances on the road.
Yeah, I'm thinking like a criminal. I'm already feeling like a lowlife, and
Wow.
I just said, man, I'm taking off.
What changed your mind?
Actually, I talked to my mom a few days before my sentencing date or whatever was going on
Yeah.
at that time, and the lawyer got me a plea deal for 3.5, and I said, all right, I'll come back and do that. That's something I can do, because at that time you do like 85% of the time.
Okay.
So I did just shy of 3 years. So I wasn't okay doing it, but it was a lot better than 15. So I ended up just going ahead and coming back, and I signed that plea deal and got the 3.5 years, and I did probably a little bit over a year in Florence, and then a couple other smaller prisons, because they just
If they just move you
transfer.
around, is that how it
yeah,
works?
they move you around a little bit if they think people are getting too close to each other, whatever the deal
Okay.
is. I mean, they could tell you a million things. Who knows what the truth is? But yeah, I ended up doing a few different prisons around Arizona, and just shy of 3 years, I got out right before '98. So I've been free and clean since then.
Wow.
So,
What's a day? Can you just walk me through a day in the life, just for reference? I have no idea what a day in the life in
No, for
prison
sure.
really kind of it looks
It's
like.
it's not like what everybody thinks.
That's why I'm
yeah,
curious.
guys. I mean, there is things that happen.
Sure.
I've seen some crazy stuff, but as long as you go in there. So if you walk into I remember getting dropped off by the bus. I remember thinking, man, this is where I'm gonna be for 3 years of my life, And I had just turned 21.
Wow. You're a kid.
2 months before I turned myself in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I turned 21 in October of '94. In January '95, I had to turn myself in. So I still remember coming down here with my parents, and as soon as the judge lays down the sentence and the bailiffs they want to handcuff you. I remember asking the bailiff yo, man, my parents, and can you just, man, I'm not running, man. I'm going to prison. Just don't handcuff me. So I think he told me to put my hands in front of me, and he wouldn't do it. So he was actually pretty cool about it.
Reasonable?
So yeah, that was when the judge tells you that you're going to do some time like that, it's just, and then they put you in this little cell, man. It's just a little cubicle, and it's got these 4 walls and a little window, and I'm just sitting there man, this is real.
It's real.
You know what I mean? Everything that my mom and dad said was going to happen is happening. You know what I mean? So, and I'm by myself. There isn't my buddies. There's not my backup. There's nobody. You know what I mean? So, I remember going to the bus to transport us to a prison, because you got to wait in jail. You got to go through a psych test. They want to see what yard to
So
put
they
you
hold
to.
you in kind of jail for, is that days, weeks, months?
It could be. Yeah, it could be at least a couple weeks.
I've toured the jail that was at
Yeah.
Madison downtown. Mm-hmm. That place is terrifying.
Yeah, it's rough. I'm lucky I got out of there before that whole Arpaio tent thing went down, because that looked horrible.
That looked horrible,
Yeah,
too.
that looked horrible. Those guys intense. But yeah, I remember getting dropped off at the bus, and you pretty much just have a sack of clothes they give you. You know, before you hit the prison yard, you're wearing your jumpsuits or something like that. I can't remember what they transported us in, but yeah, I remember getting down and getting off the bus and walking through the yard. It shut down while we went through the yard, so there's nobody out there, but just the fence, the barbed wire, the cement, the dirt. It's just, I'm like, holy shit, man, this is real, you know. So got down into, and at that yard, I was in a yard where it was just kind of it was a newer yard, and it was like a big warehouse, not a warehouse, but just like a building, and it was just 2 runs of inmates. There was no individual cells, and at the back there was like 4 sets of bunk beds. There was like probably 40, 45 dudes in there already, and it's just like, man, this all open, so anybody can pop off at any time. It's just you're not in your cell, or at least you can sleep a little comfortable at night.
Right.
You're there with everybody.
Oh.
And you don't know what this dude next to you is in here for, what he's capable of. You don't know what this dude is going to do, you know.
You know, you always hear about race in prison and things like people kind of segregate the white guys or the Mexican guys or the black guy. I mean, is that like what it is? I mean,
luckily, like, you know, your race will usually see you and they'll kind of offer a hand, you know, at least when I was there. But I got lucky. A friend of mine from the streets had gone to prison a year before me, and he was actually there when I arrived. So he kind of schooled me on what to say.
Show you the ropes a little bit.
Yeah, not what to say, who not to hang out with, because it does segregate it. You know, you got you know, everybody in their own area, and you know, you can't eat. You can only eat with your own race. You know, play sports with your own race, stuff like that. It's obviously very different from the outside life, but you know, prison has its own rules, and you got to live by those rules. You know, certain words you can't say. There's just certain things you can't do, because if you get on somebody's bad side, man, there's nowhere to run. You know, it don't matter how big you are.
There's nowhere to run.
There's nowhere to run. It doesn't matter how big you are. If you're the toughest guy in the world, when you know it's 8-on-1, 10-on-1. I mean,
were you kind of big like this, a fighter? Like, I mean,
no, I hadn't fought at all yet then.
Yeah.
No, I had just turned 21. I didn't even MMA wasn't even really too much around yet.
Gotcha.
I don't think UFC started till like 94, 95. So it
Sounds
wasn't
about right.
the pre-stages.
I remember that.
So I didn't know anything about it, and I only played baseball. I didn't come up with a wrestling background or nothing, which I wish I would have, you know, knowing what I would have gotten into later.
Where
but
you were headed.
I just didn't have that background like that, you know. So, going back to the prison thing, you know, I actually met another guy in my run. They called them runs.
Okay.
And he kind of gave me some schooling too on, you know, who's cool, who's not, what to do around the COs, the correction officers, you know, stuff like that, because. You know, if you get on the bad side of one of those, man, it's not good either.
It's going to be rough.
Yeah, so you gotta, because prisoners can make it tough for you, COs can make it tough for you. It's a very,
it's like a gauntlet. Like, how do you navigate all these different things?
It's tricky, bro. Yeah, it is, man, and just always having to be on high alert, because you just don't know what's going to happen. You know,
the anxiety you must have just at all times of.
Yeah, I mean,
through the roof.
It's kind of weird, man, because you kind of just get normalized to it after a little while. You know what I mean? And then you start seeing things that would have freaked you out a year or two ago. You're like, that's just prison, you know? So,
wow.
You know, of course I would get nervous. I was scared. And I remember I had to fight this guy because he called me a cheat on some spades game. And I'm like, all right, this is what it's about.
What you gotta do.
This is what you got to do, you know? So, yeah, because if you don't stick up for yourself, it's not going to be a good time for you.
You're going to get run over.
Yeah, it's not going to be a good time. And like you said earlier, there's nowhere to run. You know, yeah, the CEOs will protect you, and if you're in prison, man, they want to get to you, they'll get to you. That's just the way it is.
Wow.
It doesn't matter if you're in PC or not. That's just the way it is, you know?
Wow.
That is the true part, like what you see in the movies, but, you know, all the other crazy stuff, it does happen, but it's not every day, you know, but.
So, you know, I'm super fascinated by all this, and I could talk the whole show about it, but I won't. But I do want to, you know, maybe closing this chapter of the interview, like, what are some thoughts, things that you would do differently that maybe could have prevented you? I'm curious about that moment also that seems like it almost, not going to say set you down a path, and when you got cut, like from the college team, and that really set in. Like, maybe somebody else just got cut, or they didn't get into the school, or something's going on in their life. Like, looking back on a moment like that, because that seems like it might have been the point where you started down a certain path instead of going this way. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are at those kind of crossroads right now. And have any thoughts of maybe something you could have done differently or should have done differently? You talk to friends, or, you know, I don't know. I'm just curious.
I think for me, I think I wish I would have took high school a little bit more serious. I really only did enough just so I can play sports. And I'm gonna be honest. You know, I didn't care about school. I didn't want to be there. I mean, I didn't care. I wish if I would have put more thought into that part of my life, and then maybe had a backup plan. What if I don't? Because I never thought, what if I would have got hurt? I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
You know,
good
I didn't.
point.
I just thought I was just invincible because you're 17 years old. You know,
Yeah.
so I think if I would have had a little bit more planning, you know, and probably sounds cliche, but listen to your parents a little more. You know,
I think
You
that
know?
I think it makes sense. I mean, I think a lot of young folks, I'm sure I was the same way
Yeah.
too. It was like you thought you had it all figured out, and
Yeah.
I was running off to college, but I was drinking and getting high every day, and it's
Yeah.
like, you know, there were certain moments along the way where it's like, if I would have done this and
Yeah.
not that, you know, this thing could look very differently.
Yeah,
you know?
but I also sometimes too, like I remember there's to be once in a while on my social media where I'll put my prison stuff on there. And that's not to brag about it because it's nothing to brag about, but I don't hide it because I'm not embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
And I remember somebody told me one time, they sent me a message and they're like, why do you glorify this that you were in prison? I'm like, bro, I'm not glorifying anything. If somebody sees what I'm doing now compared to where I was back then, maybe it'll give them a little bit of a hope that, hey, I'm not a loser bum the way I thought I was.
Oh,
You know?
I think it's super
So,
important
yeah.
too. And I love how open you are. And by the way, you joke around about it. I mean, we
Yeah,
joke around
for
about
sure,
it. And
for
I
sure.
think it's super healthy as a way of like, I'm not embarrassed by this. It's a part
Yeah.
of my past. We all have things. And I
all
think
do.
by being more
Yeah.
public about this, especially something that was as intense as what you went through,
Yeah.
and you can see the impact that it had on those high school kids that you went
sure.
back and talked. I think
For
it'd be
sure.
cool if you did more of that. you
Yeah,
know?
I would love to do more. I like doing that. Just like I'm a coach, I love changing people's health, their bodies, even their mind. It just gets better as they work out. You know that. You're active to the gym. If you didn't go to the
course.
gym, you go crazy. I know I would. I'll
It's
go
as
crazy,
much
you
mental
know?
health as it is the
100%.
physical side. Now,
100%.
I go crazy if I can't do that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got a little rotator cuff thing going, and I can't do all the workouts that I want to do, and I'm still
the
going
same
crazy.
way, but I still go and do what I can.
That-
And those days I can't because I'm busy or I'm just, whatever. It's shit, man. There's been days where I don't go for 3 days and I'm just like, come on,
Can't do it.
Can't do it.
I
It's
can't
hard,
do
man.
it.
Yeah, it's hard.
I can't do it. Well,
It's
I
hard.
think that's a great transition. Kind of, what we all have our history, but now looking what you've made and how far you've come. Maybe take me through the next chapter of how, I know that you got into fighting and
Yeah.
you got into coaching and training
Yeah.
and all those things. So you're kind of getting out of prison now.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next couple years look like as you kind of embark onto these new journeys? And how was that kind of, I know people use the word reentry or transition.
right.
Like what did that look like? I mean, what kind of got you started on this next chapter?
So I'm gonna be honest. I when I got out of prison, I kind of did the same thing. I still didn't learn.
You went
for a
back
long
to it?
time.
I didn't know that
Yeah.
part of the story. No
Yeah,
way.
And thank God I didn't get in trouble again or get killed or do anything else. But there was some hairy times, you know what I mean? And I did it for a bit, And there was a day where one of my buddies, he's like, "Yo, man, like you're wasting your talents." I was fighting already. I was coaching my own team while I was fighting. You know?
Okay.
And he's like, "What are you doing, man? You're gonna end up in prison." And this was a friend that had been in prison and was in the same kind of game that I was in,
Yeah.
And he said something to me one day like, "George, you're just wasting your talents, man. Like, you gotta go to San Diego with Dominic Cruz, who's the one that got me into coaching at a higher level." So I went when I came back. I also was training still. I was still a trainer. I was still doing my stuff on the side, but I was keeping my normal job, and I was just that was just extra money over there.
So walk people through. I don't know if everybody who's listening to this knows, kind of, and again, I don't even know your whole journey of how you got into fighting, and because this is kind of parallels the UFC kind of growing and becoming a bigger thing, and you were starting to become a fighter as well too. Were you overseas? Was it fighting? Was it UFC stuff? Was it boxing? Like what? How did that all kind of happen? Were you just a tough guy and just wanted to get into it, or
Well, yeah, I think
how does it work?
I think because I wasn't shy from fighting in the clubs, and a lot of it was ridiculous. But I think now that I look back, and I always tell my younger students that I coach, especially kids, that I remember always fighting in the clubs like I felt like I had to prove something. And then after I started training and learning how to fight, I'm like, just don't touch me. We're cool. You know what I mean? I didn't have to go fight and show everybody that I'm a tough guy. And not that I'm saying now, but, it's just I've learned to protect myself, and that's what I coach, whether it's women, men, kids, whatever. I think everybody needs to learn some kind of skill, for
I have a
protection,
4-year-old daughter. I've been thinking about putting
Yeah.
her into jujitsu just
should, bro.
because
Yeah.
everybody's saying, the discipline that comes
Yeah.
from that, obviously the confidence and the
Yeah.
protection
It's
skills and things like
perfect
that.
for kids,
I just
bro.
don't want her to get the cauliflower ear. That's the only thing.
It'll take a long time for that. It'll take a long time for that, yeah.
You know what I
But you
mean?
can get her headgear for that, bro. You get her headgear. And thank God your girl's pretty, because you're not, bro. So let's go back on track, bro.
I love it. I love it.
So,
So tell me how you started to get into like kind of professional fighting and stuff
Okay.
like that. Because I think, UFC is huge, and I know you took some different routes.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about what that looked like. What it's like to kind of walk into a professional
Yeah.
fight. You were telling before the mics heated up, you were fought in the Wembley.
yeah, I fought at Wembley Arena, man. That was my first professional fight.
That's insane.
So going back to all the other stuff I was doing real quick, I was a part of a club, a nightclub in Tucson.
Okay.
And part of the club is it was a live band and DJ.
Okay.
So we would have this company that would send us the live bands, like small up and coming
Gotcha.
bands,
There's a pretty
And,
big music scene in Tucson.
yeah,
if
there
I'm
is,
not,
bro. Yeah, there is.
Yeah,
There is.
I actually know a little bit
And
about that.
the security team that came along with the concerts were part of Don Fry's fight team. I don't know if you know who Don Fry is.
I've
but
heard that name, but
yeah,
no.
he's a UFC Hall of Famer, fought in Pride.
Okay.
One of the toughest, actually the toughest guy I've ever dealt with.
Really?
Man of men is what they call him in Japan. He's a tough MF, bro. He's super tough, man. So his fight team was the security for the concerts that
Oh, wow.
would come.
Okay.
So I already did a couple like amateur kind of boxing, like that stuff that used to come out on FX. It was I forgot what it was called, man. But they would just get guys. You could just anybody.
Yeah, it's like
can go.
rough and rowdy or bare knuckle boxing.
Yeah,
and
so I did a
stuff like
couple of
that.
those. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And then I was
I
gonna
could
do
see you doing that,
I did,
by the
bro.
way.
It was hilarious, bro. It was hilarious.
I'm gonna have to find
I
that
remember
on
even
YouTube.
one time I fought in Phoenix. It was out here somewhere, and the announcer was like, "Straight out of prison." I'm like, "Bro, I've been out of prison like 2 years. What are you talking about, bro? Like, take it easy, if not more than that." But
They're
it was
hyping
just
you up.
Yeah, it was just hyping me up. But it was funny, man. But so I started training with them. They invited me to go down there because I had that common interest of fighting, And I still never thought I was going to be in this sport or anything, I've always been a fitness coach since I was 18. I was doing that way back then. But started training with them, and then I actually trained on Don Fry's team for about 5 years, maybe 6 years. I got to corner a couple fights in Pride out in Japan, K1 Heroes.
That's what I was gonna say. Was it K1? I think I've seen.
Yeah, so I didn't fight in K1, but I cornered Don Fry in a couple fights out there. One was Pride and one was K1.
Okay, got it.
And so I got to see that whole Japanese scene with MMA and just, bro, it's awesome. If you've ever been to Japan, bro, you got to go.
I haven't, but it looks amazing.
It's amazing.
Like one of
down
the few
there, bro.
places I haven't been that I really want to get to.
Yeah, I've got lucky to be down there maybe 7-8 times on MMA stuff and wrestling. So, yeah, it was a great time, and I just got more and more hooked, and I started training some more, and I fell in love with it, and I was still running the club, still doing other crap while I was doing that. And,
Is this boxing? Is it jujitsu? Is it kickboxing?
So
like, how does
mixed
that?
martial arts is all
just
the,
mixed
all the
martial
disciplines.
arts. That's, okay, got it.
Mixed martial arts. So when I got with Don Fry's team, it wasn't just boxing no more. I was training kickboxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. Don even was showing us some judo stuff, just a bunch of different disciplines, and wrestling and all that stuff. And like I said, I got to go corner him, and I actually started help coaching him with strength and conditioning, which that's my specialty now, and that's what I do. And striking is something I do on the side that I also love. But strength and conditioning, I've done that for pro athletes for years now. But after that, I remember I was getting ready for my first fight, and Don Fry and his team were training me for it. And he gave me a call one day. And he's like, "Hey, kid," because Don was a pro wrestler in Japan. And he's like, "Hey, the Brad Reagan's in Minnesota, where he went, Brock Lesnar, Road Warriors. He was putting on his last pro wrestling camp. So he's like, you want to be a pro wrestler?" And I'm like, "Come on, man, who doesn't?" You know what I mean? So I moved to Minnesota for 3 years, and I actually lived with Brock Lesnar in his house.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was
No
pretty cool,
way.
man. Yeah,
That's
he's a
very
really
cool.
good dude, man. Like, he's a good guy. But,
He seems like a.
he's a cool dude.
He
man.
seems like a cool
to
guy.
me, he was cool, bro. He let me stay in his house, man, and he didn't know me from anything, bro. But
Really?
his house was empty. He was on the road with WWE a lot, and yeah, it was a great time, man. And I actually ended up getting hurt while I was doing that. But I actually did a pro wrestling match in Japan for New Japan Pro Wrestling, and I did a couple of things with WWE back in that was 2000, early mid 2000s around there. And I loved pro wrestling. I got to do some stuff and pro wrestle with a couple guys that I never even thought. Chris Benoit, rest in peace, was actually a friend of mine who was actually helping me get in too. Yeah. So he would let me know when there were shows around LA, because I was out there training at a dojo for New Japan in Santa Monica. So whenever Benoit in WWE would come down, he would call me like, "Hey kid, come over." You know, he was helping me get into WWE, showing me some things, showing me how to act, and unfortunately ended up passing away. But yeah, it was a pretty big deal. And I remember coming back from a pro wrestling trip, and I tore my pec muscle bench pressing in the gym, and I couldn't. Bro, it's painful, man. Yeah, it's horrible, man.
Frustrating.
Yeah, it is.
You were probably putting up a little more weight than I was.
By a couple pounds, bro, a couple pounds. But yeah, I ended up tearing my pec, and that was a year-long rehab. So I didn't have a big enough name to go back to pro wrestling. I was just starting off, so I just didn't do that, and I started fighting. So I remember I got a call from another friend and said, "Hey, there's a spot open in London, Wembley Arena for Cage Rage," and I had no fights yet. I was just training. I had 0 fights, and I fought a guy that was like 23 kickboxing fights, like 14, 17, 18 MMA fights. And I remember I was green, man. I didn't know. I didn't really know, bro.
Yeah.
You know,
You just want to fight.
I just wanted to fight, and it was Wembley Arena. It was pay-per-view. I'm like, shit, sign me
go.
up. They gave me $2,000 cash. I didn't even care about that.
Yeah.
I gave my coach half my purse. That's
funny.
Yeah, but ended up, I didn't win that fight. I didn't know what the hell was going on.
But it had to be an amazing experience.
Bro, walking down the ramp in Wembley Arena, bro.
Tell me about that, because you see these walkouts now.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. There's people screaming, the light, the music. You got your, I'm assuming, corner, and the people that walk. What's that feeling like when you're walking
as a fighter,
out?
man? It's hard to explain, man. I know people always say this until you experience it, but the energy, the nerves, being scared, not knowing what's gonna happen. It's a lot, man. It's such an adrenaline rush that it's through the roof. When I walked my first one at Wembley Arena, and all these people, and I was getting heckled because I was fighting a guy from their area, and I had some Mexican tap out shorts, so they were calling me Eddie Guerrero. They were calling me some, And it was crazy, bro. Like, you almost get into tunnel vision too, though. You know what I mean? Because I don't know if it's because you're just scared. Everything, nerves, but
all of it.
Being scared is a good thing because it makes you aware, and if you're not scared, it just means you don't care, and you probably shouldn't be there, and you're probably going to get hurt. Eventually later, you fight so many fights, I'm sure you're not as afraid, but I only ended up having 6 pro fights. But that walk to the arena as a fighter it's something else, knowing that right when you get it, no matter what, you're going to fight. There's nobody breaking it
happening.
Up. You're going to fight. But the intensity starts when they knock on the door and they say you're next, and that's when it's like, oh, shit, man. Like, why?
Real.
Yeah, like, why am I doing this? It doesn't make any sense. I'll never do it again. But as soon as you get done doing it, you want to do it.
You
again.
want to do it
it's
again.
It's crazy, bro.
It's got to be like a high.
It is a high,
right?
Yeah, it is a high. It's win or lose, you have this biggest adrenaline dump. It's just because you're training for one day for weeks upon weeks, and then that one day comes, and obviously you feel a little better when you win. But you almost don't know what to do with yourself. It's kind of weird. I don't have to go to practice right now. I don't got to go 3 times a day.
I'd be so antsy all day, waiting for,
it's
being
crazy,
possible.
Bro. Yeah. Walking it as a coach down the UFC ramp, first of all, pride in K1, that's another level. There's 80,000 people in the Satayu or Tokyo Dome and all those just huge places where there's 85,000 people.
Wow.
But the difference between the Japanese culture and American is over there, they're quiet. You can't hear nothing. In America, it's just crazy. F-bombs, loudness. It's just another thing, right? Which, I enjoy it. It's fun, It's a great time at the events. But in Japan, until something happens, that's when the crowd kind of pops and they go back to being quiet. They're so in tune with the martial arts of it. They know the moves. They're not yelling, hit them in the nuts.
Yeah,
they're not doing any of that.
Everybody's just drunk out here in Vegas
just
or whatever.
having a great time, which is great, man. Awesome. They're having a good time. And they're keeping the sport alive, which is great, So making the walk as a UFC coach, I remember I had a coach behind me, and it was my first time walking out to a UFC, and he could see that I was nervous. And he's like, hey, coach, just take a deep breath. I remember having to catch my breath because once you hear that song come on that comes from commercial, you know that we're going to go up because there's the curtain and there's the camera on you and there's the light. And even though it's focused on the fighter, you're right there. You can feel the adrenaline, So it's pretty cool walking. I got to walk the Madison Square card, too. That was pretty cool.
Really?
The first UFC card there, yeah.
Now, the first UFC at Madison Square card, you walked out with another fighter?
I walked out with Jeremy Stevens. We fought Frankie Edgar that night.
Wow.
Yeah, it was electric, bro. It was crazy.
I went to one fight. It was at the Staples. Was it the Staples Center or the Staples Center over in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
This was 20 years or so ago. It was Hoist Gracie fighting. I think it was Ken Shamrock. I was hammered.
They fought. Yeah.
You know. And Hoist won, but those were two, like, at the time, again, 20 years ago, that was a big deal.
Oh, they're still legends now. But
I remember Paris Hilton was in, that's when she was, like, in her heyday and things like that. And it's just cool to kind of see the trajectory. Do you have any thoughts or feelings? Because now you're a coach and you get to go out on those things. Do you feel like you maybe missed some of it of being a fighter? You could have been more of a fighter. Do you ever have any of that FOMO or any of that?
No, to be honest, I knew that I didn't have the talent to make it to the UFC.
Really?
I knew I didn't. But I wanted to coach, so I wanted to fight so I could coach fighters and I could relate to them. That's really what I wanted to do. Now, I did try out for the UFC when the Ultimate Fighter came the year that Kimbo sliced, but I didn't make it. I tried, but I didn't make it. But I knew that I just didn't have the background to get me to that level. But I wanted to be around high-level coaches, and I've been fortunate enough to do that. And I've coached in Japan, Singapore, just around the world. It's been crazy, and coming from the first part of the story to now, it's crazy, and I don't sit back and look at it and maybe, I don't want to say enjoy it, but I always feel like I could keep doing more, and I always forget, like, man, maybe I should look back a little bit and see where I was to now, because it's been a pretty crazy ride, man.
I think that's an exceptionally crazy ride.
Yeah.
And knowing you now and being friends with you for the last few years and how good a guy you are and seeing all the stuff that you do, and now learning even more about your background, I think it is important to kind of make sure you reflect back on that. Yeah. I'd love to see you do more of that speaking. I just think that your story, and if we had, Joe Rogan time of 3 hours, I'd flush it out even more. I just think that stuff can be so helpful to somebody, because you never know who's in that audience and that kid who's, at that crossroads that we talked about, and maybe that's the thing that could put them on this path and not the other.
I appreciate that.
So you've gone into professional training now. So what's the next chapter look like for George Castro? Like, what is, and now I see the folks that you train and stuff. I mean, you got some athletes that don't they win some of these shows and bodybuilding and things like that? And, what's the next chapter look like for you, and kind of what are some of the goals and things that you're looking forward to in the future?
So right now, like I said, I'm the lead trainer manager at Selfmade here in Scottsdale. I'm happy where I'm at right now. I got a great group of clients, man. Like, support me no matter what. It's just, I've been fortunate to make some really good contacts throughout the years and friendships through the gym, and I'm very blessed on that, man. I really am, because there's other stuff too that, I mean, like you said, we can go into this deep stuff, but there's stuff that I've done and not proud of, and sometimes I'm like, man, do I deserve this? But I try to do the best I can now, I really do, and I try to have compassion for people, because I was always that angry guy, and I was always popping off at people. And I look back, and man, I embarrassed myself a lot of those times, and I hate it. I don't want to be that guy no more, So I think for me is I'm going to keep coaching for maybe another 4 years as far as personal clients. But eventually the plan is to open my own gym at some point. And I want to get back into coaching. I want to get a group of male, female fighters to the UFC. I think that if I can kind of pass along what I've known and I've learned, and I've been coached by high-level fighters, high-level coaches, and I want to pass that on to the next, group of people.
Yeah, the next generation.
And that way it keeps going, because MMA truly saved me from going back to prison or dying. So, I'm not saying I'm giving my life to MMA. I'm not saying that, but it's such a huge part of my life.
Totally get
that I miss it. I miss walking to the cage with fighters. I miss having that nervousness. I miss having that pressure if I coached them right, if I got them in shape, and I miss them winning. And when they win or lose, but obviously winning, and just how grateful they are. I've had a couple fighters that weren't as grateful, and they should have been, but that's cool. That's with any business, right? And any friendship, I guess it kind of happens that way. But I really see myself in the next year or two with my own gym, and I want to go on my own, just because I have my own brand and I have my own way of thinking, and I want to do what I've learned throughout the years and what I think works.
It sounds like giving back. I mean, you've been involved in a sport, from a training, from all these different areas, and it's like it's brought so much to your life, and now you want to kind of pay it forward to that next generation.
And of course, I
think that's fantastic.
Of course, I got bills to pay, but I really do want to pass it on. I really do enjoy changing people's lives in the healthy reasons, And I've been through depression. During COVID, attempted suicide during during COVID, and I was overseas while that happened, and I still think about that. I don't really have those urges anymore. Does it cross my mind? Yeah. I get anxiety attacks still, and that took me a long time to even admit because I'm supposed to be a tough guy, you know what I mean? But now I don't have a problem because if there's another guy that's gone through what I've gone or is kind of similar to who I am or the way I see things, it's okay to come out and say it, man, because fighting your mind is hard, bro. That's the toughest fight I've been in.
I'll tell you, again, I'm very public with my struggle with drug and alcohol addiction. And I've always downplayed it in my life of just like, it is what it is. And I've done a lot of public speaking, and it never fails that somebody, a mom, a dad, a husband, a wife, a kid, or somebody will come up to me afterwards and be like, look, I'm going through that exact same thing. You just never... I know I never fully understood exactly the impact that I had. And I kind of pick up on some of that from you too. Yeah. I'm not saying you're underplaying it, but I think you could have more of an impact in sharing some of those things. Because I do think, you're a big, tough guy and things like that. So being vulnerable like that, I think it could go a long way in really helping people. And by the way, what I have found in my life is when I'm doing that, it's helping me as well too.
Yeah, you get to speak about it. It gets it off your chest.
It really does make a difference.
It does, man. And I really wish there was somebody that kind of went through it. Not to say that I would have listened to him. Who knows? In my frame of mind back then, but at least it would have gave me an option. And especially this whole suicide thing, how big it is now, and that was a tough part. And I still struggle with it. I go to a counselor now.
Good.
I talk to somebody. I got my wife. She's great. She helps me out a ton. She grounds me. She keeps me on level-headed, and she's actually made my life way better. So I'm blessed to have found her after all these years.
I follow all your social. The meals and the cooking that you guys do. It's super cute. Sure. It looks amazing. I love how happy you seem to be with all that. Like that is just it's great stuff. Last couple minutes of the show. This is, first off, thank you, Jordan. I appreciate you. Thanks for coming in the studio.
Yes,
thanks for sharing all this stuff. It means more to me than you know.
Appreciate it.
When you look back at your story and your journey and the different areas in lives and kind of some of those pivotal moments, do you have any thoughts or, kind of lessons learned or maybe a life motto or philosophy that you kind of live by now when you kind of put it all back in the rearview mirror, but looking forward, like, what are things that are important to me? Do you have anything that you kind of wake up to? I like to think of myself, as kind of this resilience that I've kind of built up, but still making sure that, I have the core values that are important to me. And, I've learned a lot. I've been divorced a couple times with my drug and alcohol addiction. So I kind of have these different kind of things that are important to me. Do you have kind of a philosophy or motto or lessons learned kind of in the life that you've lived that you'd like to share maybe with the audience?
I think for me is, I was so close-minded to everything. Even if I felt that you were right, you were still wrong. Because it's probably not what I wanted to hear. And that's obviously some of the times when you should listen, right, when you don't want to hear. And I don't think I learned that until maybe a few years ago. And my wife's helped me a lot, like to calm down, listen, don't react until you chew on it a little bit, because I pop off too much. I had a temper, and it's gotten better. But I think, man, just really pay attention to the people that love you. Those are the ones that are giving you the good advice. Because when I went to prison, there wasn't anybody there, bro. There was a couple guys, and that was it. Everybody that I thought were my friends when I had a stack of cash, nah. But
they're gone.
They're gone. I did horrible things to people. I got a lot of regret, and I'm trying to get rid of that. That's one of the things I think my depression was kicking so hard. But it was during COVID. I was stuck over there, so there was a lot of things going on, But I do carry a lot of guilt for how I was when I was younger and what I did to people, and it was the part of the surviving back then, And I wish that I would have listened to people that I knew cared about me, especially my parents. And unfortunately, maybe some of us don't have our parents to grow up with like that. But there's got to be an uncle, there's got to be a friend, your buddy's mom, somebody. Reach out to somebody, because you just never know what they've gone through, and maybe they do have that one sentence that can help you out, and just be a little bit more open-minded. And there is no quick trips to getting money. There's no quick things, man. You got to grind, and I've learned that. And I knew that my whole life. I just thought there was I didn't believe my mom and dad that I couldn't get rich in 2 months, But I think just being more open-minded, listening to people, and be aware of people around you that care about you, and be aware of the ones that don't,
That is really well said. I think it's fascinating. It's heartfelt. That's insightful. I just think that you have more perspective than you even give yourself credit for. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all that today.
Thank you. I had a great time.
This was a lot of fun. So I hope everybody out there got as much out of this interview as I did. What a great guest. What a good friend, and some great insights by our friends George Castro. So look, if you have somebody in your life that you think this could be great for, go ahead and share this episode out to them. I think it could be a great conversation starter. Maybe somebody's got some of those crossroad decisions going on in their life, and I think listening to somebody like George who has been through it would really be a great starting point for that person as well, too. So, awesome stuff. So, again, my name is Steve Moak. I am the Unlicensed Counselor. Until next time, thank you very much.